This woman woke up from a near-death experience and her cancer was gone. Her name is Anita Moorjani, and her story about her near-death experience is nothing short of a miracle. This incredible story is all detailed very beautifully in her book, Dying to Be Me. But to give you a short version of what happened, it truly blew my mind when I read about it. I want to make sure I tell the story as accurately as possible, so let me read you something because I think it's so beautiful. Basically, they're in the hospital and the doctor is giving her husband the bad news that, like, listen, she's not going to make it through the night. She is unconscious. She's not really here. She's going to die, right? But she says, Anita says, at that time, this is what she says, as I watched Danny's face, Danny's her husband, as I watched Danny's face filled with anguish, and I wanted to cry out to him, "It's okay, darling. I'm okay. Please don't worry. Don't listen to the doctor. I actually feel great." But I couldn't, she said. She couldn't say any of this stuff. She was too weak. She was dying, right? But inside, she was not feeling like she was. She said, no words came out, no sound. Danny couldn't hear me. So then she wrote, in this near-death state, I was more acutely aware of all that was going on around me than I had ever been in the normal physical state. I couldn't use my 5 biological senses, yet I was keenly taking everything in. It was as though another completely different type of perception kicked in, and I seemed to encompass everything that was happening, as though I was slowly merging with it all. So she says, I felt no emotional attachment to my seemingly lifeless body as it lay there in the hospital bed. It didn't feel as though it were mine. It felt far too small and insignificant to have housed what I was experiencing. I felt free. I felt liberated. I felt magnificent. Every pain, every ache, every sadness, every sorrow, gone. I felt completely unencumbered. I couldn't recall feeling this way before, not ever. So what she's saying is, as she was dying there, right, and she was feeling so free, so liberated, not even attached to her body, and she was trying to tell her husband, I'm fine, don't listen to him. So as she continued to sense this, she said it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and almost like she got further and further and further away. So she was like expanding. And as she was physically expanding, right, this new perception of hers, she felt jubilation and happiness and peace and joy, like all these huge feelings. And I have to say, when I felt my shared death experience with my one patient that I often talk about, that is the feeling he also gave me, this feeling of like exuberance. Like, it's hard to describe this, like such peace, but such joy at the same time. It's hard to put a human, English word on it. She also said at this time, as she was expanding and as she was feeling these wonderful feelings, she started losing her attachments to like this world and her emotional attachments to her husband, to the life she had here. She could feel those falling away. And I love this because she wrote, I could only describe this as superb and glorious unconditional love that surrounded me, wrapping me tight as I continued to let go. It didn't feel as though I had physically gone somewhere else. It was more as though I had awakened, perhaps to being aroused from a bad dream, which is pretty ironic, right? Like your life was actually the bad dream. My soul was finally realizing its true magnificence. And in doing so, it was expanding beyond my body in this physical world. And then to her amazement, she says she starts sensing her dad who has already died. So she couldn't see him, she said, but she could sense that he was there. She says she said, once she could feel this presence, not really with her words, but with her own presence, like, Dad, you're here? I can't believe this. She also said she recognized and sensed her best friend, Sony, who had just died 3 years earlier from cancer. And then she writes, I seemed to know that they had both been present with me long before I became aware of them, all through my illness. So it's like she got this new awareness, not only of like the present moment, but also could see in the past about how they had always been there. Her dad, her best friend, people that who had already died had always been with her, even through her illness, before she was even aware that they were with her. She says, I was aware of other beings around me. I didn't recognize them, but I knew they loved me very much and were protecting me. I realized that they too had been with me all this time, surrounding me with love, even when I wasn't conscious of it. So it's like she had this new conscious awareness of all of these beings who had been with her forever, and she's now conscious of this. As her perception expands, let me read what she writes, because I think it's so beautiful. I start realizing that the universe makes sense. I realized I finally understand. I know why I have cancer. I was too caught up in the wonder of that moment to dwell on the cause, although I'd soon examine it more closely, and I also seemed to comprehend why I'd come into this life in the first place. I knew my true purpose. And then I was overwhelmed by the realization that God isn't a being, but a state of being. And I was now in that state of being. Whew, I love it. I love it, I love it. I feel that. I feel it. I saw my life intrinsically woven into everything I had known so far. My experience was like a single strand threaded through the huge and complexly colored images of an infinite tapestry. So she's just getting all of these revelations in the moment, basically as she was dying. She writes, I also understood that cancer wasn't some punishment or anything I had done wrong, nor was I experiencing negative karma as a result of any actions as I'd previously believed. It was as though every moment held infinite possibilities, and where I was at this point in time was the accumulation of every decision, every choice, every thought of my entire life. Many fears and my great power had manifested the disease. Interesting. Okay. What subsequently happened is incredibly hard to describe, she says. First, it felt as though whatever I directed my awareness towards appeared before me. Second, time was completely irrelevant, and it wasn't even a factor to consider, as though it didn't exist. So basically, she was having all of these realizations about her cancer, about life. The universe was kind of showing her answers on how to live and what the universe was all about. Right? And then her dad, who was in this realm as well, because he has died, spoke to her and said this. This is as far as you can go, sweetheart. If you go any further, you cannot turn back. I became aware of a boundary before me. Although the demarcation wasn't physical, it was more like an invisible threshold marked by a variation of energy levels. I knew that if I crossed it, there'd be no turning back. All my ties to the physical world would be permanently severed. But before I stepped towards this realm for good, I became aware of a new level of truth. I discovered that since I realized who I really was and understood the magnificence of my true self, if I chose to go back to my life, my body would heal rapidly. Not in months or weeks, but in days. If I chose to go back to my body, I knew that the doctors wouldn't be able to find a trace of cancer. Here is where the real miracle happens. Within 30 hours, she was awake and not dead, okay? So in 30 hours, she woke up from this coma. In 4 days, 70% of all of her tumors were gone. In 5 weeks, all of her cancer was gone. No trace of cancer. And Anita is still alive today. Now, of course, this is a complete medical mystery. Now, Anita has written a book, like I told you. She does talks. She's an inspirational speaker. And it's a beautiful story of the love of God, of the universe, and a miracle of someone who was on death's door, essentially came back after a near-death experience, and her cancer was gone. Now, you guys know I love these stories. I love hearing about near-death experiences. I love hearing about miracles. I love hearing about people's cancer miraculously going away. Hence why I'm telling you this story. I think it's beautiful. And I am sure her book is beautiful and her story is amazing. I love it. I want everyone to know about it. And the nurse in me wants to make sure I am not promoting that people can just heal their cancer themselves. I do think there are few and far between mystical, magical stories about people having miraculous things happen to them and their cancers go away. But I would never suggest someone, just think their cancer away or believe their cancer will be healed, so it will be healed. I hope that for everybody. I want these things to happen for people, but I also believe in science and in standardized treatments. And there are beautiful things that have happened in modern medicine to help people be cured of cancer as well. So I think there is a world where both can exist, right? Where you can do the standardized treatment for your cancer and still try to live a beautiful life full of love and loving yourself and true intention of your body healing, both of these things can exist. I think it's a beautiful way to share the story, bring hope, and know that there is Western medicine that can also help with diseases. Both can coexist.